Today on the Fermentation, let's talk about how little stuff you actually need in order to homebrew. Welcome to the Fermentation. This is the podcast for the City Sitting Brews YouTube channel. I'm Brian.
I'm Derica.
And today we're talking about the most basic, the most nothing brewing that you can possibly do.
That's right. So we're going to just kind of off the cuff, if you will, notes free, just what comes to mind of what you actually need stuff-wise to brew.
First, you need something to ferment in.
Now, this is something that is easily attainable. You don't have to buy specified equipment to have a vessel. You just need something that's food grade, right?
Yeah, something that you can put a lid on and that gas can escape from in some way, shape, or form.
Sure.
We'll get to that in a minute, too.
So lots of people we've heard of have gone to a bakery or a donut shop or someplace where they can get a food grade 2-gallon plastic bucket.
Even or 3 or 5 gallon, whatever you want to
get. That has a lid that fits it.
Yep.
And that is key. It doesn't have to be pre-grommeted because you can do that DIY on your own,
You
right?
can add a grommet. They cost like 50 cents or less. And just cut a hole. You can even, I've used my pocket knife to cut the hole. So, I mean, it's really easy. And that is completely free.
Yeah.
But that is the most basic way. Although, is it the most basic way?
Personally, I think just using the vessel that the juice came in the first place.
Yeah, like if you're buying juice and you're doing a juice fermentation, that is probably the easiest way to go.
Yeah.
But I've heard of people just using like their stock pot and putting cheesecloth over the top too.
Oh, sure.
I mean, you already have it. For your first time, if you're just trying this out, getting your feet wet, yeah, why not? I mean, if you have a canning pot or anything like that, just stretch cheesecloth over the top of it.
Basically, your parameters are that it's food grade, number one, that you can sanitize it properly so that it's a material that's not going to degrade when you clean it properly.
Right.
And that you can cover it in some fashion that will allow gases to escape, but no bugs to get in.
Right. Now, some people have said that fruit flies can still get through cheesecloth. They've had it happen. I agree. It's a possibility. However, that's the fermenter. Now, we're starting to talk about the airlock part. And the airlock part means letting those gases escape rather than creating literally a bomb, because you do not want this to explode. So like, don't use a pressure canner and seal it up. Don't do that. That would be bad. Now, if you used a pressure canner and it has the little hole where you put the weight on or something like that, you can leave that and maybe wrap cheesecloth around that, and now that would actually work kind of like an airlock because it'll release the gases without causing a problem. That's actually not a bad way to go.
As long as you have a tight fitting aperture that you can put a tube in, whether it be a traditional stopper or even just a hole that you can jerry-rig to put a silicone tube in. You can put the other end of that tube in a mason jar or what other vessel with a neutral spirit, and blammo, you got a makeshift airlock.
You can actually use water for a blow-off too.
Sure.
Because it doesn't ever get back in, so
it's a large
totally
enough volume.
And that's what that's called, by the way, is a blow-off tube. It's actually pretty common in homebrewing to use a blow-off tube for the first few days when you're making beer and things that get really, really aggressive at the start, because that way the foam doesn't build up into your airlock and just make a mess.
Yep.
But that blow-off tube actually works like a poor man's airlock or just an airlock. I mean, I know people that's what they use for an airlock and they swear by it and will never change. And that's fine.
We have a video comparing airlocks and blow-off tubes, and I will make sure to link that in the description below if you're interested in the conversation further.
Now, this is crude brewing, not necessarily best practices brewing, just so you understand. All of the things that we're recommending, I don't know that I'd recommend it for long-term use.
Yeah.
From here forward, at least. I mean, you can use a pressure canner with an airlock on it or something, or the plastic bucket. Those are totally fine. We still have plastic buckets that have grommets in them.
Yep.
Totally fine. From here out, things are a little more sketchy. I wouldn't necessarily do this next one all the time, but if it's your first brew, I guess it's okay. You have to find some way to rack from your vessel into another vessel once it's done fermentation. And an auto siphon is probably going to be a large investment. If you've paid nothing so far, they're like $20 and you'd be paying $20 for something that you don't know if you're going to use. Silicone tubing could also work as long as it's food grade, or any food grade tubing could work. And you can get the auto siphon started by filling it with water, putting your thumbs on both ends and putting it in 2 different vessels. You can do that. Please don't put one in your mouth and start a siphon. I don't care how clean you think your mouth is. I don't care how far away from the liquid you think you are. That's just not a good idea. It's just a bad idea. Anyway, so if you don't have the tubing and you don't have an auto siphon, you could, in theory,
Very
pour
carefully.
it carefully. When I say carefully, I mean if it's splashing, you messed up already.
That's not careful enough.
Now, for small volumes like a gallon or even 2 gallons or less, it should be pretty easy to pour carefully. Once you get to larger, honestly, if you're already making 3 or 5 gallons, buy an auto siphon.
Yeah.
Because you're just you have a potential for ruining that batch. And when I say ruin, you have a potential for adding oxygen to it that over time could seriously degrade that wine, mead, cider, beer, whatever you're making, and make it taste much, much less than you wanted it to.
Yep.
Infection isn't so much of an issue. It's the oxidation that's the problem there. But I'll be honest, I have poured brews before. I have bottled from pouring, and we don't have a problem.
Yeah.
I normally don't do it that way.
We've had greater risk of oxidation by leaving a small amount.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
This one is
Yep.
not, but
That is a greater risk of oxidation than what we've had.
right, because of all that headspace and the volume of surface area to potential oxidant.
But that's Milton's Margarita mead, and I don't care about it
So we
anyway.
don't care.
But that would be the first sketchy kind of deal for... I wouldn't recommend it. But if you don't have any other option and you don't want to invest the money, or you can't invest the money right now, then that is a way to do it.
The second potentially sketchy thing is how you clean or prepare your items.
Yeah. Star San is the best way to go. If you have some sort of an oxy cleaner, that would be the next best, just below.
There's also baby bottle sanitizers. Those work just as fine.
Yep. Those can be very good too. They can be a little bit on the pricey side sometimes, so be careful. If you don't have any of those, or you don't want to try any of those because it's just your first time out, you can, if you're not using things that melt like plastic, boil them. Now, boil it just like if you're canning. You boil the things for 5 minutes or whatever it is. Let them dry before you start to use them. Now, you have problems with potential thermal shock, potential glass breakage, potential burning, and there is also a slight but possible potential of, as they're air drying, something lands on.
Yep.
Now, the infections that come from the air idea is incredibly rare. Like, it almost doesn't happen. Most infections happen from wild yeast infection, which, here's the funny thing. Most infections aren't even dangerous. They're not even a problem. Many of them actually are things people look for, like sours and stuff like that. That's an infection.
Yeah.
An infection caused it to go sour, but it was intentional. They want that. So just because you get an infection doesn't necessarily mean everything is ruined. Doesn't necessarily mean it often does.
But
it
if
doesn't
you
necessarily
get colorful, fuzzy things, that's no bueno.
Right.
Dump it out. Don't even think about
That's
it.
not an infection. That's mold. That's different. Mold happens if oxygen can be around your
Solid fermentables.
like if your fruit. Right. And that's the big issue there, is if you have fruit floating in a brew and you don't keep it moist, you could actually get mold growth. Mold will not grow unless there's oxygen.
And that's a scenario where we would really recommend having an airlock closed environment rather than just an open vat thing.
Yeah.
Because that's going to be much more difficult to control.
Right. Never mind fruit flies and things like that getting in there. Yeah, just no. You don't trust me. We had little teeny tiny grubs or something in a brew one time that had alcohol in it. We still to this day do not understand how they were alive.
Nope.
But
we
they
dumped
were, and we dumped it out because that was just gross. And to this day I still have nightmares about it. Because it was just
It's
weird.
alive! It's alive!
Yeah, and it was gross. Did I mention that it was gross?
It was gross.
But anyway, so that's the very basics of the fermenter, the lid, how to transfer it for racking
and cleaning.
and cleaning. If you really, really wanted to, some people do this. They use a very, I couldn't even tell you what the concentration of bleach is that they use. I don't really recommend the bleach and water concept because, first, bleach is toxic to people, and bleach is toxic to yeast. So if you don't have the concentration right, you're potentially killing your yeast before they even start. And you have to re-rinse it afterwards. So if there's anything in the water that you rinse it with, you just basically negated the sanitization process completely. So that would be the lowest on my list for the sketchy versions of cleaning. But I know people that do it, and it works well for them.
Sure.
They've never had a problem. I guess it works better if you're using a lot of plastic, because you're going to melt the plastic if you try boiling it, whereas if you use bleach, you're not. So I guess it really depends on what you're going to be fermenting in. That said, I love this statement that someone made. 90% of sanitation is just soap and water.
Yep.
If you use soap and water and keep your gear clean and keep your area clean, you're 90% of the way there. Think of sanitization as insurance.
Yep.
You're doing the best you can, hoping nothing happens. No matter how good your sanitization practices are, you can get an infection. And no matter how bad your sanitization practices are, it's possible you won't get an infection. So there's no guarantee either way. Just keep that in mind. Do the best you can. Don't get crazy about it. And don't make that stop you from fermenting something. Don't let that be the barrier. Oh, I don't have star sand. I can't do this. No. Just wash it real good, hot soapy water. If that's all you got, I'm going to say that's I would put that above bleach.
Yeah.
I would just use hot soapy water and wash something real good before I used bleach. Yeah, that's my story and I'm sticking to it. Okay, on to...
So we got the vessel.
Yep.
We're all clean. We know how to transfer it.
Bottling.
Bottling.
Okay, for bottles.
Just reuse bottles.
We used to use old liquor bottles and old beer bottles all the time. Wine bottles. You know, like, ask your friends. Go to bars. Go to wine shops and things like that. Ask them if they have any empty bottles. A lot of times they will. Now, the bottle you get matters. Don't use bottles that have corks.
Yeah.
Don't reuse the corks, because a lot of the time those will be mold over time. Not great.
Yeah.
Screw caps work awesome. Swing tops are fantastic. That's basically the two. Crown caps are also good, but then you have to invest in some sort of a capper and caps.
Yeah.
So in the very beginning, if you don't have any option, I would stick to screw-on bottles.
Or swing tops.
Yep.
Yep.
If you go to the grocery store and you look around, you can find like the larger sized cheapy wines. And if you buy one of those, you have a bottle and a cap and you get free wine with it, if you think of it from that perspective. Because a lot of times it's like $7 for 14 gallons, you know?
Same with the big jugs of apple juice.
Yeah, same idea. And you can use the juices, you can use the jugs as fermenters sometimes, or you can use them to store your wines in. We have done that many times where we, especially before we had the channel, we'd rack from a 1 gallon fermenter into another 1 gallon fermenter and just put a cap on it when it was done and just pour from that.
Yeah,
and
that was our
just
table
fine.
wine, and then it's good to go.
Yeah, just because a 750 ml bottle is the standard doesn't mean you have to use a 750 ml bottle. We actually had plenty in, what was the whiskey that I drank back then? It wasn't Wild Turkey all the time. Although we did put quite a bit in Wild Turkey, 1.75 liter handles. But there was Jack Daniels. I used to put it in Jack Daniels bottles, and we had a large collection of whiskey. And as we emptied them, we just used those bottles. Yeah. It's all good. Doesn't really matter. Plenty of old wine bottles.
Sure.
Now we have mostly all actual purpose-made bottles, but reused bottles, there's nothing wrong with that.
Right. What you're looking for in a bottle is how well does it seal? And so investigate the cap. You know, sure, drink whatever you purchased, but then look at the cap carefully, particularly a screw top. Does it have like a cushiony interior?
Seal inside there.
And that's going to help it seal better, so you won't have to worry about oxidization when you're storing and aging.
Yeah. Then when it comes to aging, honestly, the way we do it, we just keep them out here in the studio. It stays 70 to 75 degrees. They're all right
the bottom
there.
section of our bookshelf is cabinets, and so that way we don't have to worry about light or anybody accidentally bumping them. They stay in there until it's time to bring them back out and taste them.
The question of light comes up a lot, and I don't have concrete proof, but I know that during fermentation, light almost doesn't matter. After fermentation is when I think it does. If you keep stuff out in put it in your windowsill and the sun's beating on it, I don't think that's going to be as good at lasting a long time as like ours that are kept mostly in the dark. Treat it like a mushroom, except don't put it in the ground.
Yeah.
Although people do that too.
Yeah.
People do all kinds of things. I don't recommend all of it. But the simple thing is, keep it simple. If you try to complicate it too much, that's where mistakes usually happen. And that's from our own experience of doing this for a couple of decades. Whenever we thought we were getting too smart for brewing, it showed us that we didn't know what we were talking about. And
right.
You mess it up.
So I think there's something to pair with this minimalistic gear is to create minimalistic brews.
Yes.
You don't want to overcomplicate your ingredients list if you're doing the bare minimum of gear, because you don't have a lot of the tools that are going to help you with those
Right.
more complex recipes.
So you want to keep that simple too.
Remember, we haven't mentioned our favorite tool, which is the graduated cylinder and hydrometer,
Right.
because we don't consider that to be minimalistic gear. We consider it to be essential gear, but not minimalistic.
And when we say minimalistic, we're talking like either the world has ended and you're working out of a cave somewhere, or you just do not know if this is for you, so you don't want to put any investment in yet, or you simply can't put in any investment yet. I mean, we understand that.
Sure.
And that's all three of those scenarios, except for the first one, it's probably unlikely, are totally fine. So don't think that you can't make your own homemade wine. Some of my favorite brew that I've ever made, it was literally made in the half-gallon plastic container that the grape juice came in.
And that's a simple, sweet,
It's just a sweet red wine. It used bread yeast, white sugar, and the container that the grape juice came in.
And the grape juice.
And that was it. And that is my favorite thing that I've ever made. I've made it dozens and dozens of times.
We actually have some grape juice sitting on the floor over there that we
bought some the
intended to
other
do
day.
today, but time's getting away from us.
Oh yeah, it's getting late.
All right, is there anything else you can think that you want to add to this particular discussion?
I think from the take of the minimalist brewer, the first time trying this with no investment, I think we've nailed it. But we didn't really talk about ingredients. Let's just talk about ingredients really briefly. Fruit juices are fantastic. If you go to Publix, Aldi, or any grocery store, you're going to find half-gallon to gallon-sized juices. They are all fantastic. You can make a nice low ABV cider or wine out of those. You can add some sugar to those and get a little higher ABV. Or you can use honey. Now, honey is tricky because the cheaper the honey, the more likely it's not really honey. One honey that we found that's very inexpensive is actually Costco honey, the Kirkland wildflower honey. It's a great honey. It's a blend, so it's not like a pure one hive kind of deal, but it's a really good honey. It usually runs between $3 and $5 a pound, and 2-3 pounds per gallon. You got a really nice mead from that. Works beautifully. I know there are others. I know there are store brands that are great. I don't know offhand what ones. So you may have to look around a little bit, ask around a little bit, try some out. You may even like some of the really cheap ones. I can't tell you for sure. I know people that have fermented corn syrup and loved it. So, it can happen. If you want to go really, really cheap, do a Kill You, which is basically just a sugar wash and add Kool-Aid to it. I'm not even kidding. It actually tastes good. Or orange juice or
whatever flavor
juice or whatever flavor you want.
At the end you want to add.
Yeah, there's so many different ways to do this on the cheap and on the most basic system possible that I think that's what brewing is really cool. What's really cool about brewing. Wow, I got my mix all tucked up there. Because anybody can start at any time. Now, when I say anybody, please be of legal drinking age before you start doing this, because I don't want to get in trouble for that, even though, your parents should be keeping you from doing it anyway.
Be responsible, whether you're brewing or drinking.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you have some beginner basics that you want to share with us, please let us know in the comments below.
And if you have any questions, as always, leave them in the comments. We do get to them as often as possible, maybe a little too often sometimes. But anyway, thank you so much for listening and have a great day.
Bye-bye.